Welcome to Lifting the Line, a construction contracting podcast. Welcome to Lifting the Line. I'm Andy Shaw from Brickies Network. I'm here with my co-host, Elly Broadbent. How are you today, Elly?
I'm good, thank you. It's really good to be here.
Yeah, brilliant. Today we've got a really exciting guest. We've got Ross George from Oz Engineering, and he is really passionate about the education of young people in so many different industries, and I'm very passionate about that too. And Elly introduced me to Ross and said, come on the podcast and let's have a chat. So welcome, Ross.
It's so good to be here. Thanks so much for inviting me.
Okay, so tell us a little bit about what you do. You've got your engineering business, and how long has that been operating for?
Yes, so we're probably like a lot of people listening, we're a privately owned family business. We've actually been operating in our existing form. For those that this is coming across on the radio or something, I've been in the industry for a bit more than 40 years now. So I've obviously seen a hell of a lot of changes. And we're an engineering company, so we design and build special purpose equipment, or we sometimes call ourselves technology enablers.
And I've had a walk through your business, and I've seen, the areas where a lot of the work has been created. And I saw, I think, one of your combustion units that you were, so what are the sort of things that you're creating there and some of the projects you've been working on?
One of the great things about walking through our place, if you walk through our place again, Elly, 6 months later, you'd see completely different projects. If you had a walk through about 12 months ago, you would have seen a machine that cleans the inside of wine barrels without actually opening the wine barrels. So this is an Australian technology developed in Western Australia, and it's an Australian startup. And we did their first production machine. If you went through a little bit after that, we were refurbishing a machine that my father and I designed in 1990. So we got the machine back 35 years later to completely rebuild it, and it was quite a unique machine at the time. It lifted these 77-ton heat exchangers into the bottom of the cat cracker at what was then the Shell refining, which is now Viva refining. If you had a walk through before that, you would have seen a whole series of high temperature furnaces. So one of the great parts about what we do is the variety. But one of the other really good part is because we actually build, we employ a lot of tradesmen. So we've got this great relationship between engineers and trades to drive really good outcomes.
That's right. Yeah. Well, we thought we might pick your brain about some of these important topics that I think most industries are facing as well at the moment. One of them being about carbon emissions and about sustainable materials and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
Andy, you've got some questions around that, I think, don't you? And the way industries are changing or need to change. Yeah.
Yeah, we notice in bricklaying bricks and concrete blocks, there's a heavy carbon footprint right at the start to actually make the product. But once they're made, there's no carbon footprint on them at all. They're just fantastic, and you can reuse them. Once they're done, they're done. You don't have to maintain them. So they have a heavy carbon footprint at the start, but after that, they effectively don't have to have any. But a lot of other products don't have that. There's maintenance, there's carbon footprint to keep things going. So I suppose just probably get a bit of an opinion of what Ross thinks about those things.
So we're quite passionate in that space as well, and we're one of the we've now got 4 electric vehicles. We've got 45 kilowatts of solar. So we've more than halved our greenhouse footprint since we've started on this journey, and we've got an ongoing plan to keep reducing our carbon footprint. So that's what we're doing ourselves. We've got a lot of technologies that are in that space. We're about to launch a project, a carbon capture project with one of the universities, which is quite exciting. But we've got one customer has got a waste heat to energy technology, so it's taking waste heat from industry and turning that into electricity. We've done some work with pyrolysis companies, which is a carbon capture technology. We've got another customer who's one of the first, or the first in the world as we understand it, to be able to break the vulcanization bonds on the surface of rubber, so we can recombine recycled rubber with other recycled plastics. And we've also got a geopolymer technology, so it's an alternative to concrete. So, which is one of the ways of, potentially you could use that technology to make, instead of making concrete blocks, you could make geopolymer blocks, which would have a very small embedded carbon footprint. So you can actually reduce the carbon footprint in your raw materials, as well as obviously the great efficiencies you get from ongoing. So we work along the space. The frustration we've got in that space is, and we were talking about this before we came on air, there's a lot of organisations that put a lot of things on their website, that do a lot of chest beating and a lot of hand wringing. But what we're finding, the rubber's still got to hit the road. The reality is that as soon as you come up with a green product, we find people just don't want to buy it. Companies don't want to buy it. And for all the stuff that's on their websites, for all the chest beating, for all the hand wringing, they're still not prepared to put their hands in their pocket. We've got any number of, we've got a hydrogen technology where we're blending hydrogen with natural gas. You can start the road towards reducing your reliance on fossil-based fuels for high temperature applications. And as soon as you mention, there's a premium on it, everyone just goes away.
But you think that's a cost thing that they don't want to look into, or what's the reason?
It's purely a cost thing. And look, and I get it. Especially public organisations, but even organisations that have got shareholders. There's a certain percentage of the population out there that are somewhat sceptical about it, and if they see their council, their government authority, the company they're a shareholder in spending inverted commas more money, the organisation gets pushback, and they're a loud enough minority that it does influence the decision of decision makers. And I think we either need to pull down the commitments on their websites, or we need to push back against those people. One of the two.
Yeah, right. Well, I think it's gleamingly obvious that some of the things that they say are great for the environment, or where this is the direction we're going, like they're stupidly expensive, and they're throwing a huge amount of money that's not really giving a massive return in what they say it's going to be, like wind farms and things like that. Some of those.
Well, I do think the transparency is going to have to be increased, because we're all on this same journey where we have to make these. What's our target by?
Yeah, net zero. But I'm actually not sure, Elly, that we are all on the same. There is a certain percentage of the population. I mean, you look at what the National Party's going through at the minute. They're talking. Well, they already have. They've thrown away net zero. So
I was just about to say we're going to get like 1 year off, and so actually, you know what? Stuff it. We're not going to actually achieve it. So let's drop it all together.
And I think that's the challenge we've got is we aren't on as a population and as a world population, we aren't on that same journey. And the decision we've taken at Austeng is we want to go on that journey, and we're doing it personally at our place as well. Where we live, we've replanted a block in 75,000 trees. So we're doing it at our business. We're doing it personally, and that's what we can do as individuals. And I think and time will tell whether we're seen as Fruit Loops or visionaries.
Yeah, absolutely. Do you think we've lost our way, whether we're trying to do it as a collective, or we should be looking at doing something personally that benefits us personally, instead of trying to do it as a collective to benefit everyone?
Oh, look, I think you've got to do all of those things. There are things we can do as individuals, and and the obvious ones are solar panels and batteries, and driving electric cars, and and choosing our building materials. Coming back to the subject of this, choosing our building materials, choose how we build our houses, and we can do that at an individual level. But we're not big enough to decide how we're going to do the next freeway. So we do have to get governments on board. We've got to get corporations on board. So it needs to be, and there are shareholder advocacy groups, that are pushing things. So it's got to be right across the spectrum. And I think we've got to recognise there's no silver bullet to these things as well. You hear a lot of the criticisms, X, Y, and Z, won't solve this problem, but it'll solve another little problem, and something else will solve the problem that you're talking about. So it's a very multifaceted solution. The big push, the post-war push of having centralised, which was a great idea at the time, was having centralised power generation, huge economies of scale sitting in the Latrobe Valley, the Hunter Valley, Gladstone, Port Augusta, and Collie in WA, and then having those huge efficiency of scale, and then sending electricity out. I mean, that was great at the time, but the solution now is a far more decentralised solution. Which consists of, as we spoke about, consists of individuals, consists of corporations, consists of government, and so and we in our professions and we in our private lives can make those little contributions. And if enough people do it, then enough corporations and governments will get on board.
So just for a really practical way of thinking about it, I Googled carbon footprint for an iPhone, right? So everyone's got an iPhone, and the biggest CO2 emissions is in the making of the phone. But then there's later on, it's the charging of it, and then it's also the discarding of it. And I suppose at different points in the life cycle, like I obviously don't play a part in the manufacturing side of it, but I am in the ownership of it. And then how I charge it, one of the best solutions for that is to own your iPhone for longer and use it for longer rather than just replace it the minute there's a new one that comes out. So, I think, as you said, like the complexity around the issues and around the life cycle of materials and products, and, the manufacturing is just one part of the life cycle. And I know when I've talked to other industries, very few are thinking about the end of life. That one industry particularly, I talked to somebody, won't mention names or companies or anything like that, but the wind farms. And so the wind turbines that are made, there's still no real plan for how they're going to be decommissioned after their use.
Yeah, and when we've got that in Victoria coming up at Codrington, I think.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, and I think we do have some choice in the manufacture. Taking the phone example, is buying a phone where you can replace the battery. So many are sealed. So I think that's what we can do as individuals. And if you get enough individuals buying enough phones that have got replaceable batteries, the manufacturers will say, gee, I better start making phones with replaceable batteries rather than a lot of the minute. I've got a watch at the minute, and I had to throw the last one away because you can't replace the battery, which just frustrated me enormously.
Oh, yeah.
And we can use, we can recycle. So a lot of the internal mechanisms can be recycled from other things, but that means you've got to hand your phone back in in order for it to be picked apart and use those parts for recycling, whereas I know that I've got a box in my cupboard at home with a handful of phones.
We've got a lot of phones in there.
They're all sitting in there and, I'm probably waiting for it to get to a certain amount when I can actually just submit all of it. But, the responsibility then at that point is obviously on me, isn't it, to return it back in. So when you get clients and companies and so on coming to you, you're part of the design process, aren't you? You actually contribute in that. So they might not come with a ready-made design that they're asking you.
And in fact, that's one of our business strengths is they haven't come with a ready-made design. They've come with an idea, with a concept, with a flow sheet, and our what we think is our great talent is we're able to get the ideas out of their head, put it onto paper, get it designed, wrap the engineering around it, and turn it into something.
Yeah.
and looking, and in part we can't affect things like the electronic controllers, which are like phones. We can't affect those, but we can affect the design of the way we build things. And obviously, it's a little bit easier in our industry. Our scrap is scrap steel, goes back in, so it goes into the scrap metal bin and up to the recyclers and gets remelted, and that's quite an efficient way of, rather than mining it. We're actually a fun fact for people listening. We're actually involved in recycling metals from cremation, and that's been a fantastic. We're returning. The company that's doing it is returning, palladium, silver, titanium, nickel, chrome, back, getting remelted back into the system. And again, that wasn't done 15, 20 years ago. And it's saving huge amounts of energy, huge amounts of mining. So there are plenty of ways. There's still plenty of low-hanging fruit out there.
So one of the benefits of people coming to you with their idea is that, you've got the things that you value and stand for in terms of the way you operate with your recycling of materials and so on. Do you find that people are also wanting to learn from what you know and understand about how things, I don't know, whether they perform better or function better or are better for the environment as well? So you're informing, or are you more or less just providing solutions for their problems?
Interesting question. And it varies a lot. I mean, we do a lot in the environmental space. People that have got environmental ideas come to us and they say, we need to turn this into production equipment. So they're already on board with the whole theme of it, and they're interested in the mechanic. How much it's going to cost, how quickly is it going to be done. All of those important things. Look, in the other cohort, that might be sort of large industry partners. Their drivers, their KPIs from their masters is price.
Yeah, and I know the government is hugely concerned about the incoming, the next generation of people who are coming through and how they need to be, and we need more skills for the growing, the industries that are growing and the workers that are being needed for these new and innovative types of technologies that need creating for. I'm wondering how all of this is going to get achieved, really.
Yeah, I'm actually quite optimistic about that. A lot of people sort of complain about, sort of the inverted commas, the younger generation, but, we find the people that we come across are passionate and enthusiastic. And I've always said, if you've got someone that's passionate and enthusiastic, you can colour in the skills, you can colour in the knowledge. If they want to learn, they'll learn. And we've seen that our hydrogen project. At the time, there were no regulations. The regulator, God bless them, actually wanted to work with us, and there was there were just huge knowledge gaps, and our guys were happy to fill it in, happy to learn, keen to learn. And so we managed to get the first, as I understand it, the first regulatory approval to run a hydrogen blend burner, running on hydrogen and gas. And we had to learn that, and everyone was keen to learn that. And now we're, inverted commas, a bit of an expert in that. So I'm actually really optimistic about the skills.
It sounds like training needs to change then, doesn't it? It's this idea of siloing the education in a institution and then releasing them to go into the workforce is not really doesn't line up with what you were just saying, does it really?
Yeah. Well, and there's two things. Well, there's a lot of things there. The first is if you've got base skills, that's the foundation to build on. It's not, as long as you've got the nuts and bolts. The other thing is, but certainly the silo things, is getting out of the silos is really important. And one of the silos, again, Andy and I were talking before this started. We employ engineers and trades, and our engineers and trades, live together, work together, and so there's not this this demarcation that, everyone sort of blends and it flows together. And, what do you think about welding this up, or what do you think about, what size pipe it should be? What does your engineering calculations say? How are we going to do this? What do the fittings look like? So there's a lot of sort of cross-cultural, for want of a better word, and that's, I think, the real key to success. None of us have got all the answers, but together as a collective, we do have all the answers. And how do we work together? How do we break down those silos? We've all got different educations, which again means we all bring different things to the problem and the solution. And I think that's the real key.
Yep.
It's interesting you say that, Ross, because in construction, we've moved to especially in residential construction, we've moved to this massive subcontractor model where it's segmented into all of these little trades, and a builder or a developer will bring in a plumbing contractor and a electrical contractor and a bricklaying contractor and a carpentry contractor, and they're quite separated, where maybe when I started my apprenticeship 30 years ago, builders had more teams of people that did everything. And I feel like we've got a bit of a disconnection now of that whole picture of how everyone fits in and the communication between each one and what that person can do or that particular trade can do to assist that particular trade and make it easier for everyone. Where you're saying that all of your engineers and your tradies that are out there, the welders and whatever else work, they're all talking all the time. Okay, do you reckon we can do it this way? Do you reckon we can do it that way? Where I think there's a real segment of that in the construction industry.
And it's great you say that, because one of the things I hate hearing is not my problem.
Oh, my pet hate
yeah,
too.
that's right. Yeah, that's right. We're all in this together. It doesn't matter whether you're building a house or building an office or whether you're or whether you're building machinery like we do, or my wife and my daughter-in-law are both lawyers, and again, there are a whole lot of skills in that area, and so it actually is it is the carpenter's problem where the electrician's going to run the wires. It is the brickie's problem how they're going to tie it to the. And I'm not in that space, so these might be bad examples. But it's not. Yeah, that's right. We don't live in isolation. We don't live in a vacuum. If we're going to produce housing, buildings, whatever, we've got to realise that we are a collective, and certainly the challenge is how we. How we create a cooperative model where everyone owns the problem, everyone owns the solution, and therefore it becomes more productive because you don't get contractors walking away, and the next poor bloody contractor's got to come in and figure out how to solve their particular problem.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think this is my personal opinion, is I think a part of that is everyone has to see that they have a value and they're on the same level. I find in construction and in lots of different trades, you were talking about, like lawyers, that you've got lawyers, or you've got engineers, and you've got the tradies that are on site doing the things. They talk to each other like they're on a level playing field when it comes to, well, you're a skilled tradesman in your area, you're a skilled engineer in your area, you're a skilled lawyer in your area, or whether it be a doctor or whatever it might be. They're all valued trades, or because like I see a doctor as a trade. When I look at a doctor, they're a trade. Like I look at an engineer, that's their trade. They have knowledge in their area. I think there's this subconscious thing in construction that when you're a tradie, you're lesser than a doctor.
Yeah.
Or when you're, as the bricklayer, you're lesser than the builder, or you're lesser than the electrician because they have a license and you don't, or whatever it might be. Where at the end of the day, go and ask the electrician to lay some of those bricks and their stuff. They can't do it. Pretty much like I remember doing a house years and years ago for a guy who was a top orthopedic surgeon. And he came in and laid a couple of bricks. Man alive, they were the worst 2 bricks I've ever laid. And he sat there and he actually said, he goes, you guys are just as skilled as I am. You're just in a different industry.
Absolutely.
But the financial reward that he probably got in that industry compared to this one was completely different. It was just a different value set dollar-wise, but that didn't mean that the knowledge was less valuable.
Yeah, and that's this is going off on a bit of a tangent, but one of the things that we try and do is do things that nobody else does, and or be experts in a particular space that few people are, and therefore you can, without ripping people off, you can command a bit of a premium, and I think if there's one message I'd have is. And it doesn't, there are some people in the area that I'm with that are just fantastic TIG welders, for instance, and they're doing, work in pharmaceutical company, and they're getting a premium for their time. And I suspect the same, there's the same in construction and in bricklaying, and again, correct me if I'm wrong, but, you could be an expert in laying glass bricks. You could be an expert in doing curved walls. You could be an expert in doing heavily reinforced walls, out of big blocks. You could be an expert in, in thin mortar, thin mortar construction. So, I think one of the mistakes we make is, we try and do everything. Whereas if you actually said, well, I really like this particular area of this subsection of my trade, and really concentrate on that, and then go out to the market and say, I am really good at X. Yeah. And if you've got that problem, I'm the man or the woman, and come to see me, and I'll do it way better than the next guy, and it'll only cost you a little bit more, and therefore, you get a premium. You're doing interesting work in an area that you like, and one of the things I tell people is, find your passion. Find out what you really like and what you're really good at, and work on that. And that'll come.
Yeah, it's we'll roll into a topic that we've had a discussion about a little bit earlier, but in saying that, I find it very difficult when I talk to business owners, and it's not just bricklaying business owners, but all sorts of different trade businesses, and they go, all aspects of bricklaying or all aspects of plumbing in all areas. And I'm like, mate, you've told your customers that you basically do anything and everything everywhere, and your customers don't know what you do, but you've actually told them nothing. And I think that comes into something that we had a bit of a chat about earlier, that when we go off and we become a tradesman or we learn our skill, whether it be an engineer or a doctor or a lawyer, that's the technical skill that we've learnt for that particular service that we're going to provide. But that never tells you anything about the actual business acumen that you might need to go off and start a business. When you talked about marketing and things like that, go out and market it to the customers. Well, you might not know anything about that. What's your opinion about learning that next level?
Well, look, it's essential to be the top in your or to be the top in anything. You need three things. You need to be good at your trade. Now, whether your trade's a brain surgeon or a welder or an engineer or whatever, you need to be good at your trade. Yep. And that's sort of the thing that we all as technical people sort of concentrate on. But you need to be passionate about it as well. You see people that are really good that are just, and you'll never get work like that. And the third one is you've actually got to make a real effort to be a good communicator. And they're the three really important things. Now, if you're, and take the sort of the specialist skill set. I'm a specialist at this particular sort of bricklaying. Rightio, who are the potential customers for this? Let's go out and find them. Yep. Let's go out and talk to them. Find an excuse to have a coffee with them, have a beer with them, go to the next conference with them, whatever it is, and communicate just how good you are. I mean, the situation for us at we lost most of our business in 2013 when the large car companies left. Right. And my business partner, my darling wife, I was all about making better mousetraps. And Lynette said, no, you've got to go out and tell people you're making mousetraps. And when you tell people you're making mousetraps, they'll actually come and buy them off you. You can make the better mousetraps till you're blue in the face and they'll sit in the cupboard. Yeah. And you can be the best, in this particular case, the best brickie in the world. But unless you tell people, you just, you're just going to pick up the mundane work if you pick up work. So you've got to go out and you've got to communicate, and that's not easy for us. I'm not I'm not a good communicator. But you've got to develop that skill. That's the as we were saying before, that's the thing that I found really hard when I graduated, was actually figuring out that the technical stuff does not exist in a vacuum. And if anyone takes anything away from this, is that your great skills, to express them properly, you need to recognise they're not in a vacuum, and you need to go out and tell people actually how good you are. And therefore what sort of premium you can get, so you can be like the orthopaedic surgeon. And get that premium.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting. You can be the best. You can be the best in the world at anything, but if no one knows that you do it,
you're going to be a pauper.
You're
going to go hungry.
You're going to be a pauper. Yeah, you're going to go hungry. Yeah, and I think that's an education thing that I think gets completely lost. And I'm not sure if that's something that you've ever taught at TAFE about how to promote yourself, Elly, because like it's such a big thing.
Look, I think it's probably a human problem when it comes to communicating about yourself, and I struggle with it now. And I'm thinking about it while you're talking. In my spare time, am an artist. I struggle to even say it. And I create art, I paint, and there's a whole bunch of other things that I do with my art. But yes, it's all sitting on my computer and it's all in my studio. And I'm actually meeting with someone this week to be mentored, because I actually don't know how to communicate what I do in my own spend, about all my art. And as a teacher, everything that the kids do at school, they also have to communicate. So every project, so at the moment, I was in class this week and I was with students that were learning about the terms and conditions on social media, which I think is a brilliant activity that this English teacher has designed for these students to learn about, because don't we all tick the box for terms and conditions, and yet guaranteed nearly none of us read them. So she's told the students, you need to research terms and conditions to understand what they are and what's in them. And so the students have researched this, and they're all researching, X and Instagram and Facebook and Snapchat, and they're aghast at the information that is in those terms and conditions. But they've researched it, and I know on Friday they have to do a presentation. None of them want to present what they have learnt. Because they have to speak in front of other people. And it is just one of the hardest things to do. And actually, you've been to and been part of a group that encourages and is an area, a space. What was it called?
So yeah, I'm a big one for, if you don't know how to do something, go and learn how to do it.
Yep.
And I can't remember how many tens of thousands of dollars I spent with a company called the Speakers Institute to learn how to be a public speaker. Actually get out there and present yourself and tell people what you do.
I find that I'm really amazing at singing other people's praises, and I love it. I love meeting people, finding out what they're great at and talking about them and just kind of sharing, but when it comes down to talking about myself, I just want to die 1,000 deaths,
And going back to our topic, that's I think that's what we need to be, and I think especially the trades, is just not something that's covered in trade school. Is that, and I think going back to your point, Elly, about education, we need to learn a little bit more about accounts and a little bit more about legal stuff, and so when you come out, okay, I've got my ticket to, in this case, be a brickie, but I also know a little bit about accounts, I know a little bit of communication, I know a little bit about marketing, and I know a little bit about unique selling propositions, all those sorts of things. I mean, quite frankly, in my last year of engineering, if I didn't do that at all and I covered all those other things, I probably would have come out with a much, much better degree. And I think in education, and Elly and I have worked together in that space, is that's one of the things that I'm trying to get schools to think about, because again the schools say, we are teaching X subject, and that's what they focus on, but it doesn't exist in a vacuum. It doesn't matter what it is. It doesn't matter whether it's art or engineering or bricklaying or whatever. We don't exist in a vacuum. When we need to get the these students to understand that. And I did a different route on the speaking to you. I'm sort of was more self-taught, but at the end of the day, we both got to a point where we can sit in front of a microphone and talk. And that's not an easy skill. I know the first time I did it, I was lock solid.
Yeah.
And was virtually incoherent.
Yeah. Someone said to me years ago that the two biggest fears people have is talking to the bank manager or public speaking. And
public speaking's the worst.
Yeah, and I think public speaking is probably seen as performance, but it's actually not.
No.
It's they're human skills of just being able to relate and talk and make eye contact and, read body language and engage and, be interested. And
and there isn't a formula. The best, again, if you're talking about networking and you're talking about sort of building relationships with potential customers and all the rest of it, you're actually not public speaking. And there's not a particular formula. If you like going dressed as X or Y or whatever, or you talk like this, it doesn't matter, because what at the end of the day, what a builder or a developer in this case is buying from you, apart from your skill that they bricks, is that I can communicate with you. You understand me. I understand you. We can because we can communicate. You're going to make my life, the customer's life, easier. Therefore, logically, I'd use you, and I'm happy to pay a bit of a premium for that because you're so good, and we get on and we talk, and that's and so you don't have to be, you have to play golf together or darts together or whatever. You've just got to be able to know that you communicate with someone.
Yeah, absolutely. I see that all the time where young tradies, especially young tradies, fall down, and it doesn't seem to be just bricklaying. It's all young tradies. They've gone out, they've decided to start their own little business, and they're having a go and they're doing a great job.
And they're passionate, they're enthusiastic.
Yeah, passionate, enthusiastic, everything. But of course, then it becomes you get asked to do a quote for a job, and they go out and they talk to the quote. They'll go out and talk to the client, and they may have actually sold it fantastically because they know their knowledge, they know their skill, they know how to fix the problem for the client. But then they don't really understand that it's not just about the work. The customer's wanting the experience of getting the job done. So that means there's going to have to be a quick turnaround on the quote.
Yep.
You've got to let them know what's going to happen next. You have to guide them through that next process. And they get there and they get home and they go, okay, I know I can do the job. I'm not really sure how I'm going to price this job because I haven't really been taught how to price yet, or I don't really know what's the next step. So, and they might get around to sending a quote back in a couple of weeks.
Yep.
Because they've avoided their own communication problem.
And of course, by that time, the other brickie that they've asked a quote for has got theirs in.
100%. And they sit there and go, oh, the other bloke was probably cheaper than me when I put my quote in. But it actually probably wasn't. The other person had accepted the quote and they'd started the project before you even got your quote back in.
Yeah.
You just don't know that.
Yeah.
So do you reckon the problem is pricing it, or like that? Because part of me, I think, is the typing and the writing. Is it? Is it the typing, the writing, or the?
I actually think, someone said to me once, what you're trying to do to get work is remove obstacles for the customer. Now, if the customer knows they can communicate with you, they know they can see that you've understood what they're looking for, and that you've effectively communicated that. You've removed all the barriers, and all you got to do is pay money after that.
Yeah.
So, and there are some customers that want to know the ins and outs of the duck's guts.
Yeah.
That is true.
And there are other customers that couldn't care less. I just want X number of things done then by Tuesday.
Yep.
And so, you've got a part of the communication thing is a two-way thing. You've got to actually understand where your customer's coming from. And they're all different. And, and in fact, I was doing a job the other day. Oddly enough, I was in fluoros and I was servicing a machine because I happened to be at the right place at the right time. And I had an electrician putting a PowerPoint next to me. And I finished this job on this machine and I actually got a wet rag, cleaned the whole enchilada down. It looked pristine. And he said, what a waste of time. And I said, the person I'm dealing with that runs this business is a lady. You look at her, she's immaculately dressed. And I said, she'll walk out of here and she'll see that clean machine. She'll reckon I've done a great job.
irrespective of what you've done
that's
inside the
right,
machine.
exactly.
Exactly right, yeah.
Exactly. And I said if you're smart, as a young guy, I said I'd clean up all of those strippings where you strip the wires and all the rest of it, and all the drill the drill shavings and all that. I'd sweep all of that up, and you'll get your invoice signed off. And to his credit, he actually did it. But he said, "Oh, that's such good advice." And that's understanding your customer. Now, a different customer, couldn't care less.
Yeah.
And you wouldn't bother spending the extra half an hour sitting there like I did polishing it up. And again, that's going back to what we started 5 minutes ago. That's the communication thing.
Yeah.
Being able to talk to them and say, okay, and it's not an easy thing. I think I've got this customer pigeonholed there.
Sometimes you get it wrong too, yeah.
Guaranteed. Yeah, if you get 9 out of 10, you'd be more than happy.
And I think communication skills on how to smooth over a problem when it comes over too is just
that's right. We'll have problems.
Yeah, like an argument or misunderstanding. It's like
absolutely. To recover from a situation.
I had a salesman tell me once, he goes, you know the old saying, the customer's always right? He goes, that's not true. He goes, it's having the customer think they're always right. And I went, oh, I like that. Like, if that's what the customer needs to feel like they've had a successful outcome and it's not really costing you anything, it's just a half an hour or whatever of wiping down the machine, keeping it lovely, well, then that's what the customer needed.
Oh, I charge the customer the half an hour to wipe down the machine. It didn't cost me anything.
That's it.
Yeah, but it's interesting, your point about the orthopod, you got him to lay a couple of bricks. I mean, again, that's communication with the customer because he walked away saying, I know I've hired the right guy because I'm really skilled at my trade and, I can't do it, so I've got a guru on board. So you've given him comfort that you can do the job. And that's what people are looking for. Human nature is we want to make our life easy. If someone walks in and says, I'm going to make your life easy, here's the job. It's only money.
Yeah. Yeah, that's very true. And I think what a lot of young tradies think, and I think this might be across the board in every industry, is that you don't get good at something until you've done it 1,000 times. Like it's repetitive. It's repetitive. So you have to keep, even if it was uncomfortable that first time, you have to keep going through it to get better. It's practice makes perfect. Practice makes perfect. Practice makes perfect. And I think we can very easily jump in our head to go, oh, well, that didn't work. Well, it might not have worked that time, but the next 5 times you did it, it might have worked perfectly.
Yeah, yep.
But if you make that decision off the one time, and I think that's, and they're all those things that we don't learn when we're learning that.
Our trade.
Trade.
Yeah.
It's the life experience.
It's that other one of those 3 factors. It's that bit out the side. It says, I'm a good communicator. And good communicator includes understanding the customer understanding you, and the messages. Yeah. And that's as I said, if no one takes away anything else from this, it's that part of it. And it's not taught. So therefore we've either got to teach ourselves or we've got to go out and find, like you did, someone to teach you.
Yeah.
Well, I think that advice of getting around someone who's just, 5 or 10 years ahead of you in the business that can kind of show you the way.
Well, yeah, and mentors are great. Mentors are good. If you can latch onto a mentor,
surround yourself with people who are.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. And they don't necessarily need to be in your trade area. You might say, well, I actually know my trade, but this is where I'm looking for a mentor in this other space.
You say mentors are fantastic. What did you do to source a mentor? Have you got a story or an experience about you sourcing a mentor when you were younger?
Look, I'm one of the fortunate ones. I'm in a family business, so I obviously had the generations above me. Was one, but look, I had different people over different times. Where there was one particular customer, and he was talking all about. This was early in my career. And I was talking all about the technical stuff, and it was a real light bulb moment, and we were talking to his customer, and he came out of the meeting. He said the guy wasn't vaguely interested in what you're talking about, but I said, it was really important, and he said, not to him, it wasn't. He wanted to know what colour it was. I just completely missed that. He couldn't care. He said, you're the engineer. He said, you'll sort out the nuts and bolts, but he said this has got to fit in with all of this other stuff. He was an architect. and those sorts of things. So I had customers that were mentors. Other people that were a bit older than me. In my early days, we worked for a lot of the car companies. Again, there were people there that were really good. So a whole variety of things. But
you know what? There's something that we do in the education, and that is we observe other teachers, and it's part of our professional development.
Yeah, okay.
Is to go and watch other teachers teach, and what it does is it can highlight, because of course you're in your own mind you're critiquing them, and you're measuring yourself against them, and so you're saying, actually, I know I do that better than them.
Yeah.
But
I think.
Yeah, that's right, because we've all got egos. But like the other part is like, oh, that's never done that. I've never seen that before. That got that result. And I might use that, and it becomes another part of your sort of skill set, I suppose, another tool in your box kind of thing to use. And I think that education environment, and this is the pity about online learning and all these other things that are happening now, is we're not around other learners. We're not surrounded by others that are also developing at the same time as you, or you've got maybe your first and second and third years in the same room, or, that learning environment and having others around you, which is what education's trying to do in teaching space.
Yep.
I think is something too that we should probably have in all our areas.
I think that's really important when you get to later on in learning your craft.
Yes.
I think that's really – I think early in the piece, mixing, say, a third or a fourth year apprentice with a first year apprentice. Intimidating and extremely overwhelming, especially for a young kid in a trade. I think that is. And I think that teaching model can probably be too much. And I think that's probably hard on the teachers too. If you're trying to teach a young new up-and-comer something really detailed and keep them concentrating, but then you have to jump off to teach a third year something.
It was, because in my first year of uni, we were all doing it with each other, and then we went out into the workforce, and I was ready to continue in that vein, but there were older teachers that would not have a bar of having anybody in their classroom. I don't want anyone watching me. And I was like,
Yeah.
But I could see it was the gap, Yeah,
and that's a shame. For any industry to advance, we need to bring our young people. We need to bring them under our wing. And that's an obligation we've got as
I think so.
As moral human beings. We do, as Elly knows, we do quite a bit in the intern space and the work experience space, because I just think it's if we want
we've got to hand something down.
Yeah, that's right. If we want decent people, we've got to put in the effort. So
I was thinking about that. I was thinking about that earlier about work experience or internship. I find with a lot of the younger generation, they don't see that there's a value in them going and donating their time to learn something. They always want to be financially remunerated for it. And especially in the trade industry, and we talk about this in apprentices a lot of the time, that, that paid education instead of you paying for the education yourself, being paid for the education. And I mean that by like the employers paying you to do your apprenticeship, where in other industries you might go off to uni and then say if you're a lawyer, you have to go off and do an internship with someone where you don't get paid for that time, but you have to do that as part of your education, or it's very, very minimal whatever you'll get. But so I thought about that earlier, and I remember when I was younger, I spent a lot of time working with different tradesmen for basically nothing. They bought you lunch. They bought you lunch and you slaved your guts out doing the labour, but you got to learn a bit about what they were doing, and that was really valuable to me. But I find now that a lot of young people are like, nah, unless you're paying me to turn up, I'm not coming.
Yeah.
And I find that frustrating in a lot of industries, and I think it's a society thing now.
Yeah, and I'm a bit on the Darwinistic side of that. Well, if you don't want to do it, well, okay, you can stay working at McDonald's. Whereas the kids that are keen, that are prepared to do it, they will progress. And then someone 10 years later will say, oh, you're really lucky. Yeah, that's right. Look what's happened to you. So
employment leads to more employment.
Of course it does. Yeah, that's right. Connections lead to more connections, and if you're a good communicator, they lead to even more connections again, and so it's an upward spiral. But But yeah, you've got to start with that, and it's an interesting discussion. We've got our smoker room. Everyone's there together. Our engineers, our admin, our trades, and people being what people are. The young guys tend to aggregate in one area. So we've got engineers sort of literally sitting next to tradesmen, that are the same age, and the engineers have got $80,000 HECS debts that they're still paying off. And the tradesmen have got a car and are owning a house because they've been earning money since they're 17. So there's a huge disparity in favour of the trades, despite what some people think, in favour of the trades. I reckon these two particular people I'm thinking, I reckon the tradesmen would be easy $150,000 in front of the other guy. And they're exactly the same age and they've got exactly the same responsibility and they've both got absolutely fantastic skills. And it's so, and it's just not that well recognised. It's the trades have got it so good in that space compared with the equivalent kids that go through uni.
Yeah, I couldn't agree. I couldn't agree more. Couldn't agree more on that. And I struggle with young kids that I speak to, and they just go, I started an apprenticeship, but I wasn't earning enough money, and so I'm not going, hang on a minute, whoa. That education for that 3 or 4 years that you're going to get in that, and you're not going to be in debt. You're going to be getting something for your education. And I talk about this quite a lot, actually, to lots of people, that I believe doing an apprenticeship is just another form of tertiary education.
It's exactly what it is.
That's all it is. But the attitude in the young guys that are doing the apprenticeship is they think they have a job. So as soon as they think they have a job, they need to be paid for it. They're being paid for the work they're actually doing. So they think they're getting paid for what they're actually doing on site.
Yeah.
Where I go, actually, no, you're being paid to be at uni. Everyone else pays to be at uni and doesn't get any money.
Well, in fact, they get money taken out of them because they get a debt. Yeah.
Exactly right. So I think it's just pictured differently, and I wish that in high schools, they actually termed it like that. Okay, you can go to uni and you have to pay to go over there, or you can go to uni over here and get paid for it.
And get an equivalent qualification that is just as well recognised, that is just as important, and contributes just as much to the society.
Yes.
And I know we've obviously got a bit of work to do on the sort of the recognition of that. There's the one of the terms I really hate, which is used quite often, is the word worker. Because sort of that that's got this implication of there's no brains behind it. Which is in the modern tradesman, it's completely not the case. They've got just as much expertise. It's just in a completely different area, and and there is so many opportunities for so many good trades. I mean, and sort of brushing on another topic that's relevant. Everyone's talking about AI at the minute, and AI is this and AI is that, and it's going to do something. But at the end of AI, you've still got to build it. You still have to build it, and who's going to build it? It's the tradesman. So if AI really takes off, potentially there's more opportunities for trades.
Absolutely.
And we've just got to recognise that more, recognise the value of apprenticeships, recognise the value of of all the things they get compared with the alternative.
Yeah, I think what you said there is the recognition of the qualification. So that's something that I find in a lot of trades that, say, aren't a registered trade or a licensed trade, like a high-risk trade, which would be, electrical or plumbing. There's a high risk involved of something could go wrong.
It's not a high risk in a brick wall falling down?
Well, there is, but there is a high risk in a wall falling down, but there's not many fall down. It's in that sense. But if someone touched a live wire, you're going to get electrocuted. Or if a pipe bursts, there's going to be a huge financial damage, of flooding the building or something like that. So they're probably a bit more recognised because you have to have a licence in that respect. But the thing is that, and we talked about this earlier, that in bricklaying, qualified bricklayers 35 years ago, 65% of bricklayers in Australia had a qualification. They did an apprenticeship. They had I am a qualified bricklayer. Now it's less than 40% of bricklayers out there have a qualification because it's not really recognised that that's a qualification. And that's not saying that the bricklayers out there that don't have that ticket aren't very skilled. A lot of them are very skilled. But if there's not a qualification that gets recognised, well then what are we comparing you to? If everyone's just a bricklayer because they call themselves a bricklayer, then it's hard to recognise the actual qualification.
Yeah. So going back to the point of difference we were talking about a while ago, if you walked up to a customer, we're trying to make customers' life easier, and you said, "There's my trade certificate," that's a point of difference to the next guy. And the customer's going to look at that. They don't know anything about bricklaying, but they know what a certificate that says this guy. Say, "Oh, okay. Potentially, you've reduced my risk. That makes my life easier. Therefore, you're more likely to get the work."
Look, and you've said that bricklayers are being employed to do work without the employer checking to see if they're.
Oh, yeah.
Like, there's nothing even valued in that sense that, say, a customer or a business is saying, "I want to see your qualifications first before I hire you."
Yeah.
So that's not even coming across, whereas I obviously can't teach without those qualifications and they want to see them before I start.
Yeah.
So that value is not being expressed, but it could be.
Absolutely.
And it could be driven not by the customer or the business, but it could be driven by the bricklayer coming first saying, "I've got my qualifications. I can guarantee that the work I'm going to do."
Here is a point of difference.
Yeah,
Something I loved when I was running my bricklaying business is that I would ask the bricklayer I was going to employ if they had a qualification as a bricklayer. And it wasn't that necessarily I was thinking that they didn't have the skill. I wanted to see whether they'd actually committed 3 years to learn. Because, that's what, when you're as an employer, you're asking, "Oh, have you done your qualification?" Like, there could be a guy that has the same amount of skill, but I want to know if that guy's actually committed 3 years to an employer.
Yeah, so he can turn up to work.
So he knows he can turn up to work every day and he's reliable. And so there's more to just asking the question whether you've had a qualification or not than just can you do the skill. That's, there was a few more steps in my thought process as the employer. Why am I asking that? Because I wanted to know whether they'd been committed. And then I could actually, or then I could also ring that employer and go, "Hey, you apprenticed this kid. What was he like?"
Yeah.
And then you can get a few more details. But yeah.
Well, I'm just thinking what a great time we've had, Ross. Thank you for coming. I feel like we could pretty much tackle any topic and enjoy the conversation. Was there anything else you wanted to?
No, I just wanted to say, look, Ross, I've really enjoyed the conversation with you today, especially along the sense of you talked about mentors. Mentors don't have to be someone that's just there in your pocket all the time. And I'm a big believer that you can have so many people in life from so many different fields that can just drop that little bit of gold. Like you said, that person in the meeting came out and go, "Hey, what did you say about it?" You did. They just wanted to know what colour it was. And you were like, man, that's like one little bit of gold from someone probably in a completely different industry going, you missed that bit. Oh, man, I've learned something. And
you never miss it again.
Yeah, you never miss it again. And it's probably 30 years on and you still remember it. Oh, man, I'm so glad that person told me that. So and I've learned a couple of little bits of gold today out of you. So I think that's fantastic.
Oh, thank you so much. And people out there listening have found it interesting. For me, the big takeaway is really look for your point of difference. What are you really good at? What are you really passionate about? And really work on that and really market that and really go and tell your potential customers and potential customers that you are really good at that, whatever it is. And people in my experience are more likely to bring you on board.
Great.
So thank you so much for having me. It's been great. It's been really good. I don't do this very often. It's awesome.
Brilliant. Thank you.
Thanks for coming, Ross. It's been great.